Welcome to Pain in the Arts, the podcast where the pursuit of meaningful art meets the unpredictable demands of real life. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Straight into it.
Wow. I'm
No
amazed.
messing around.
No initial chit-chat?
I didn't say that. Just,
No, we're hunkered down here in the cool studio.
well, actually, I'm going to turn the aircon off.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we slowly start to boil, that's when we know that we've rambled on for too long.
Well, I'm hoping that our son is going to water the plants outside because they need it. It is quite a hot day here. And I tell you what, I've just had a delicious plum courtesy of the tree next door, which has generously grown over our fence.
Did you eat the mangled looking one or did you eat one of the other ones?
I chose the best looking. We've got plums over one fence. We've got nectarines over another. Very
Really?
exciting.
I love
One's just-
nectarine.
And that neighbour also
My
has a
hand might-
lovely lemon tree, which the lemons taste actually nicer than our lemon
Well,
tree.
I know they've got nectarines. My arm may stray over the fence because I don't think there's many branches of that nectarine tree hanging.
There's not many, no. But each year it encroaches more and more because the tree obviously gets bigger. We've got a fig tree in our front yard.
That you planted.
Yeah.
It's
the
very
fruit seems to
juvenile.
always fall off. Yeah, I know. But I'm sure we can get some. There's some growing on there. So I actually feel like we're raining abundance around our yard.
The fig tree, do you reckon it's taller than you?
Yeah.
And you're not super tall.
Neither are you compared to a tree.
It is minuscule. So I think even though it's providing fruit, it's not edible fruit yet.
It's juvenile.
Yeah.
Our salad greens are growing very well. So it's a hot day in the garden, but hopefully everything will survive. It all relies on our son going down to water it.
Oh, well, we'll see what happens there. It's a week between episodes, and there's so many things that seem to happen between episodes that I don't know which one to talk about or which thing to bring up. First, I thought when we were beginning to do this podcast, I was like, I better save some stories because obviously we do see each other every day, which I thought would be a challenge to bring up something that I haven't already told you or you don't already know, or it just seems like I've got the opposite problem.
Documenting the multitude of things that happen around here.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And of course, you do know this. We had the camper open yesterday. I'm still refusing to call it a caravan.
It's a little caravan. It's a little Jayco.
This is
What do
from
they
the
call it?
80s. It's a wind-up. It was called a J Swan. And at some point, maybe in the 90s, they changed it to Jayco Swan. Anyway, who cares? But
You who have looked into it extensively.
I didn't want to go to an enclosed tin caravan where I felt like I'd be a sardine just getting boiled in my own juices.
And also we felt that Birdie wouldn't like to go into
Well, that's
capsule sort of space.
That's interesting because when I was going around to showrooms and different caravan places, if I could entice her into a regular caravan, she either wouldn't go in or if she went in, she'd leave straight away.
Yeah.
This style is the whole top half is canvas. So it's like a tent on
And
the
you
top.
can open it so you can see through every side all around.
It's got a hard
'cause
roof.
It's got the mesh.
But yeah.
It doesn't feel like the walls are kind of as permanent.
And this is the first year that we hadn't used it between Christmases,
Yeah.
which is a little bit sad, but also maybe indicative of the year we've had. I'm not sure. We normally take an Oz tent. I'm just thinking now, anyone that's listening to this that isn't a camper, maybe
They've
just
switched off.
No.
Sorry, guys.
But we normally take an Oz tent, which is one of these tents that takes 30 seconds to set up. But anyway, I had to open it up and see what was living in there. Turns out a whole tribe of ants, whatever the collective noun for ants is. 3 black spiders and a huntsman was on the outside. So they're not there anymore.
Thank goodness for that. I'm not into the huntsman.
Good on them. Yeah. Plenty more where we're camping.
Now I've got to look up collective noun of ants.
I feel like we should know what a collective... You look it up and then I'm going to guess. Okay, so there's a pride of lions. There's a gaggle of geese, a murder of crows, a parliament of owls. What would ants have? They're strong. Oh, a regiment. Hang on, it's an army of ants.
Army of ants is one of the acceptable.
I mean, it's one of the most common. Okay, is there one that's more?
Might depend on the context, but
Where does army fit into it? I thought army, that was it. I thought I'd landed on it. Is the other one close? Is it a similar type of thing? Like,
yeah.
I said a regiment, but that's what got me onto army. Okay, a comrade of ants. Oh, is it military? Is it a military term?
It sounds
precision.
vaguely military, but it's not really military.
What is it?
There's a colony of ants.
Oh.
There's also a nest of ants. So that seems to be like more appropriate to.
Army feels a little more appropriate. Yeah.
You feel like that there was some kind of military takeover situation happening in the camper. So we've got an army of ants against a single human being. So who won?
Well, I actually didn't do anything about them. I just thought my presence would scare them off.
We can live alongside one another. Well, I'm less concerned with the army of ants than the singular huntsman.
It was small and it was on the outside. I shooed it away.
Wow.
So I'm
sure it won't return.
I don't think it will.
Because when you're lying practically up against the canvas side and then a huntsman appears next to your eyeball, that's a frightening experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not keen on that when I'm trying to have any kind of relaxation
here's a story.
on holiday with Birdie, which doesn't happen.
Do you remember that time where, so this is when there were fires in Victoria. Was it Black Saturday?
Black Saturday, yeah.
I don't think it was that time though, was it?
It was Christmas Day fires, remember? And we were supposed to go down there on Boxing Day.
Yeah, because we normally go down Boxing Day.
The whole place was on fire. They nearly lost the whole township. They lost the township next door at Wye River.
It was really, really bad, and it came within a couple hundred metres of where we camped.
Absolutely devastating for that whole coastline and that community.
So we couldn't go down that year. We headed north instead. We were on our way heading up to the Murray River, and we stopped overnight at, remember there's like where the bush rangers,
I'll never forget
a particular bush ranger hid out?
Yeah.
How many huntsmen were there?
That was the worst. See, I've got a little bit of a huntsman fear.
Spider or huntsman?
Mostly huntsmen. Like all spiders I'm not super keen on, but it's the huntsman. It's the hairiness of the legs and the whole, I don't know, fat body.
Just want to apologise to any listeners who are driving looking for the huntsman behind their visor.
This was like a nightmare situation. I mean, Birdie wasn't coping. The three young fellas at the time were just, it was hard work. We had lots of camping set up to do, trying to cook meals. It was hot. There wasn't much water around. And we happened to set up our camper. And this was a while ago before we had this Jayco we're talking about. It was a camper and a tent, and there was just lots of stuff to set up. Took us ages, and we realised that the tree that we were underneath, all of a sudden, these huntsmen started dangling down, and I'm not kidding, it was like Christmas ornaments. They were just dangling down like from every branch and dropping on our camper.
Yeah.
It was horrifying. Like, I just wanted to scream and run away.
It was bad. And it was night.
We couldn't move. You know, it was just that dusk. You could see them silhouetted against the last light in the sky. I still have the memory burnt onto the back of my eyelids. One of our kids is also quite scared of spiders.
Yeah.
So I had to put on a brave face and pretend it wasn't happening. I didn't want to draw attention to them because I didn't want him to be so scared.
Yeah. I don't like them either. And
horrible.
And I do have stories of when I lived in a train carriage and it was just inundated with some of the world's largest huntsmen. So I wouldn't say that cured me. Probably made it worse.
I'd say it probably made it worse.
Probably made it worse. But yeah, I did not enjoy seeing those spiders. I flicked some spiders off and then there were more. And at one point, I don't know if I told you this, before we went to bed, there were 9 on our camp.
Oh my God.
9 huntsmen, the size of your hand.
Oh,
and I was just like, I can't do anything about this except ignore it. Oh, and also that night, do you remember how many of those little black beetles were around?
Ah, yeah.
The size of a fingernail. Were they or were they smaller? But there was like dozens
Yeah,
in our
that was
bed.
that wasn't a fun night. That whole experience
was awful when I think back on it. Oh, good times. Well, it's my turn to bring us a topic. You know, who cares about turns and who did this and what's fair?
Right.
Nothing's fair in this world. And you seemed keen. And
Did you have a topic?
well, I'm sure I did at one point during the week. I'm sure I probably had 5. And then I saw you studiously on your computer typing away. And I'm not sure what got you so enthused, considering you brought a topic last week.
Well, there was a little while there we were bringing a topic each. So I was assuming we're just kind of bringing one each a week and seeing how we go. But that's fine if I've got the only one this week. I feel like it's a bit of a down viber of a topic.
Oh, why? You brought a down vibe of a topic last week.
Great.
Well, that was our bonus episode. That was our Rare Disease Day extra episode. So if you haven't listened to that, it's a bit of a different episode. Probably reveals another side or a bit of a different angle on our family. But
well, I hope that there's a bit more light, just the fact that we're talking about it.
my finger is resting on the red stop button.
You're going to can me. Well, this week I thought we could talk about imposter syndrome. It's something that we've referred to once or twice, and I think something that we've, dealt with, I guess. I think a lot of artists experience this, and so it'd be good to have a chat about it. Sometimes talking about something or bringing it out in the open does help. So, hey, maybe it will be helpful to you if you should be
An imposter.
well, not so much an imposter, but feeling like one from time to time.
I take solace in knowing that everyone seems to deal with it at some point. And a lot of these things we talk about, we also realise that you never deal with it just once and it's done.
Yeah, that's the thing.
None of these things, you can't read a book on it and go, oh, well, that's it now. I know that. It's all sorted. It's kind of like an ongoing management, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like so many things, that's right. It appears dressed differently each time, depending on where you're at in your life. So, yeah. Let's just talk about, well, what is it, I guess, to start with? It's actually quite widely recognised as a phenomenon where it's like a pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence to the contrary that they actually are competent and successful. It's an internal experience where you believe that you're not really as competent as others perceive you to be, or that you're not worthwhile. The things that you're producing aren't actually any good, even if the actual work that you are doing is good. It's that self-doubt.
Would all this go away if you worked in a vacuum? I mean, it's easy enough to say if you work without caring about where you see yourself in respect to other people, or if you could just lock yourself away, and a lot of people do for a period of time. Is that an antidote to imposter syndrome and perhaps half a dozen other syndromes?
I feel like it can exist because it does exist despite, what people, like it could be like 100% of people are saying good things about you and it would exist anyway. But the other side of it is that your art can't exist in a vacuum, like without, people viewing it or reading it or listening to it.
It's been done.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about when you're creating it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good. But I think it's just an internal dialogue that comes sometimes when you least expect it, sometimes when you've been feeling good about your work, and all of a sudden those intrusive thoughts will come in about, oh, this or that, or what if it just looks like it's a copy of something else, or this technique has been used before, or...
I've had it even when I've been happily working with a musician. Just actually being in the moment and still having that intrusive thought for whatever reason. I've had it even doing a gig where someone, if I told you about, I mean, this probably happens semi-regularly where I'd be playing and if I might look out and just see someone staring at me and they look really angry and upset that I'm even there. and then you can feel like, it depends, but some thoughts that might go through your head are you feel a bit fraudulent. But every time in that situation, it's that person that will come up afterwards and say how much they enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh, that was their listening face. That was their appreciative face.
So maybe they've got a problem with their face more than you.
When someone takes a photo or if you take a selfie and I think I'm smiling and then I look at it and I go, no one would call that a smile. So maybe I've got the same face when I'm watching something I really enjoy.
Sometimes when I'm talking, you look like I should just shut up. So.
No comment. You got your glasses on. Look at that.
I know. I've just had to put my glasses on to make sure I can read my notes.
I'm happy to see that you're wearing your glasses and you've moved out of that denial phase.
So, imposter syndrome. You know, the term imposter syndrome was actually coined by a couple of psychologists, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes, in a work they published in 1978. So it's been around for that long.
That doesn't seem that long.
Well,
78.
Yeah.
Would have thought
so.
Imposter syndrome. Does that mean that as a species we've been losing confidence over the years?
I dare say it existed before then, but specifically they studied it. And in their work, they focused on imposter phenomenon among high-achieving women. So that was their focus group and their study group. They set out to understand why there was self-doubt and persistent feelings of fraudulence experienced by successful women, and they focused on women in sort of corporate, academic and various other professional settings. And they found that many of these women, despite their professional successes and recognition, that they often felt like they was deceiving others about their capabilities, and they attributed their achievements to luck rather than their own skill or competence. They felt anxiety, self-doubt, just an inability to internalise the accomplishments that they had. Even though they might have got accolades or whatever, they still didn't feel like, oh yeah, I am successful here. Despite all of the external validation, these women kept feeling fraudulent and feeling like they'd be found out to be frauds.
Yeah. And were they?
No, they were genuinely very good at what they were doing. But yeah,
fraudsters wouldn't have that feeling, would they?
No, they love getting away with it.
They know that they're fraudsters, and that
maybe imposter syndrome is
the gig,
the opposite to being a con man or a con person.
Maybe
confidence trickster.
Well,
obviously, there's a broader scope now. It's been shown to influence people regardless of gender, regardless of the field they're working in. It certainly has a wide application these days. So, yeah, that's where the initial term came from and the initial findings of that study. I mean, we are talking about it today as it applies to artists, but as we can see with that study, it does apply across the fields, even whether people are prominent in their jobs or not, or whether they feel like they've achieved outside success or not. The feeling of being fraudulent or being, not qualified to do the work, to be creating something applies across the board a bit. I was talking to a tradesperson recently who's had a really long career, and he's actually a very successful consultant now, like having done lots of work. He was saying that he really struggles with imposter syndrome all the time because he's making lots of executive decisions about big projects, and he just feels like, what do I know? But he actually knows so much. Yeah, it certainly does apply across the fields.
Maybe it's something that actually never goes away as well. These sorts of things that interrupt our day and interrupt our creativity and interrupt our enjoyment of what we do. I think sometimes it's just about not focusing on it and just getting on with the creativity, like nearly being able to sort of go, oh, that's what that is.
You jumped ahead to the conclusions section.
There you go.
Nice one. I like your problem solving.
It's just experience talking.
Yeah.
But I always come back to that analogy. You have a glass of water and your teaspoon in some dirt and you stir it all up. And then that glass of water, which is now a bit dirty, that sort of represents, say, your life at this current point in time. You could try and clear up that water by spooning out the dirt, but it doesn't work. You're still going to have, at best, cloudy water. But if you get a jug of water and you pour it in and that cup starts overflowing, then what you ultimately have is you're replacing the current situation with brand new, fresh, positive things, and then just continue putting the good stuff into your life. That's what I was thinking
So that's a
of.
solution. Yeah, I like that analogy and the replacement.
Yeah, that analogy is much better. If I had a glass of water and dirt and a jug,
Well, we've got imaginative listeners. They can picture that, I'm sure.
you can try it at home.
I mean, I think that does go down to like what it does to us when we are focusing. Well, like you said, if it's a stone in the water or a clump of dirt, once we've got those intrusive thoughts about imposter syndrome, like I feel like a fraud or I can't do this, or who am I to think I can write such a big idea into some words, and picture this and wrap it in the words that people will read. Like that's how it comes to me. And even in my job of writing, words for businesses, sometimes I think that like, who am I to try to sound like an expert in the law or in this field or that field? It does happen. But the worst result of that is that it actually turns us away from doing the work, and it can actually stop us doing the work. Like there's all the emotional side of things that you feel like crap and you sort of become insular. You can really separate from people. You can just take a real dive in your mental health from it, which is awful. But the fact that it also stops you from creating the things that you want to create, I think that is the real tragedy of the situation if it gets bad enough. Sylvia Plath said the worst enemy to creativity is self-doubt.
Sylvia Plath.
Who's Sylvia Plath?
Yeah.
No, Lyndon.
I don't know Sylvia Plath. I'm distracted by all the noise outside.
There is a bit of noise, but the good news is it means our son is watering the plants, so they will survive. Sylvia Plath, how can I explain her? You'll have to go look her up.
I wouldn't be the only one that doesn't recognise the name Sylvia Plath.
Okay. Well, she's one of the greatest writers of the last century. But
okay. What did she write?
The Bell Jar and many other things. I'll bring a sample of her work another time.
Well, actually, I can't believe I haven't heard of it. She's got a familiar sounding name.
Yeah, you would have. I think there's even been movies made about her life.
In this world where there's so much information available, we're not all watching the same thing at the same time. It does create a sectionist sort of view. Like you can live in extreme areas of interest.
Yeah,
like forever.
That's right, yeah.
Because there's so much information and you can pursue that without being bombarded by whatever the mass media is saying as well. So, like believe it or not, there's people alive today that have never heard of Taylor Swift.
Yep.
So, but you're a writer, so you know who Sylvia Plath is, and it's incredulous to you that I
and I'm
didn't
sorry to come
recognise
across
the
like
name.
that. Yeah.
No, I'm just making a point. On one hand, I kind of think, I can't believe I haven't heard of it. But then I think, well, maybe that's also the world we live in and the world that I live in. There's probably famous musicians and producers that, are world renowned that if I mention them, you wouldn't have heard of them.
Yeah, that's right. And that actually happens quite often that you'll say, such and such did this. And I'll think, who's that? And it'll be
You're very lucky. My finger was over the red button.
I'm sorry.
You were nearly cancelled from your own show.
Well, I would like to sort of make this proposition that in the face of imposter syndrome, the very act of continuing is really courageous. I feel like, and I know I've certainly been in this category where I talk myself out of things so easily and just feel so disqualified and not worthy to even pursue stuff. And it can be quite debilitating for a long time. So I think just continuing, getting up again and trying again shows real strength of character. If you've got those horrible thoughts of being an imposter or being not worthy, if you keep going, I think that's actually really quite remarkable.
Do you remember recently we were talking about things that people have said in the past hold you back, that you remember them as opposed to the positive things? That sort of plays into this a bit, doesn't it? Because if I'm given a compliment about any aspect of what I do creatively, whether it's because of imposter syndrome, low self-esteem, confidence, or who knows, it might even be the person giving me the compliment. Maybe I think, well, they don't really know what they're talking about, because if they're not a musician, if they were a musician, they'd sort of know that I hammed it up a bit there. If something awful or embarrassing happens, or someone gives me a backhanded compliment or tries to sort of take me down a peg, I'll remember that, and I'll actually give that more space and more validity than the compliment.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and we have that negative bias in our makeup, I think.
do we?
Yeah, we do.
Some people don't seem to.
I think as a species,
right.
Some people are probably better at focusing their mind on the positive rather than the negative. But a lot of people that you would hear, even very successful people, would go, oh, yeah, it's, you can hear 100 compliments and then the one negative thing stays. I think when you continue creating in the face of imposter syndrome, the reason that it's so courageous is because it's not an enemy from the outside that you're facing down. It's one within your own gates, and that can be really difficult in the face of those deeper fears and insecurities to go, yes, but I'll keep going anyway.
So when you're, like you said earlier, you face imposter syndrome from time to time, and then you find a way to move forward. Do you feel courageous?
Oh, no, because I just still feel like an imposter that's continuing
It's easy to say this stuff, but like say people are, you keep on doing it and it's a courageous act. But I'm not saying that's not sincere, but you don't feel that within yourself.
That's actually something that has helped me whenever I feel like I'm a fraud, or who am I to do this, or I can't do this, or whatever. If I was to imagine that a friend of mine, or literally anyone who was trying to create something, if I knew that they had those thoughts going on in their mind, the thing that I would want to do is just grab them by the shoulders and go, no, it's not true. Keep going. You can do this. Like, you should have a voice, and you should say the things that you want to say. You should create what you need to create. The world needs you and what you've got to give. And so then if I imagine that I would do that for anyone else, it means that I'm not as hard on myself. And I go, yeah, well, it's true that everyone should speak. So
I'm just thinking while you're saying that of the propensity of our nation, and I believe in the UK, which is where we are born from.
The worst of the worst.
What's that?
The criminals.
The convicts and criminals, and the people sent to lord it over them. The history is interesting. But anyway, I don't think this exists really in the US and in many other countries, but we've got the tall poppy syndrome.
Yep.
And there is a term when even your friends secretly, it's not that they don't want you to succeed, they just don't want you to do better than them.
Ah, right.
Right? And it's all linked into this tall poppy syndrome. So even if someone like you was hearing my internal fight against imposter syndrome and they were shaking me by the shoulders and they were saying, no, that's not who you are. I believe in you. You can do it. I wouldn't believe them. They're just saying it to be kind, because deep down, honestly, I reckon I could count on one hand the people that I would believe them, and everyone else I would think, you don't have it in you really to believe that about me, because we're brought up with this tall poppy syndrome.
No. No.
What do you mean, no?
I don't think anyone's there going, you shouldn't, because I'll feel worse about myself. Like,
no, I'm not saying it's even a conscious thing. I just think at I don't know.
I think that things have changed a little bit in that regard as well. maybe I'm optimistic, but I think wanting to hear from more voices and wanting people to be able to express a whole lot of different facets of views, I think that has shifted. We used to just only accept there'd be a couple of experts in each field, but now there is much wider recognition that if you're into something, then yeah, you got something to say on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that if you're an artistic, creative person, or anyone really, but if you find that there's things that are really making it less enjoyable for you to do your work, if you have thoughts like imposter syndrome and these things continually sort of plague you, then you do really need to be actively engaged in that not happening.
Yeah. I've got a couple of suggestions. Acknowledging those thoughts when they come is surprisingly powerful. Like if you're thinking all the thoughts come crashing in that you shouldn't be here, that you're a fraud, they're all going to find you out. Just kind of viewing those thoughts, not from afar, but just kind of going, oh, I'm noticing that these thoughts are happening. I'm thinking about how I don't feel like I'm worthy of this task or that I'm bound to fail or whatever. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. It's actually quite a powerful psychological tool that counsellors will tell you to use in a lot of different scenarios of mental health. And just sort of describing those thoughts to yourself brings a real degree of distance. It's already reframed them because it's just reframed them as thoughts that might not necessarily be truths. It's just thoughts that are occurring to you at that time. I think that's a good strategy. Another one is to refocus on the work. What are you doing? What does it matter to you? And why is it that you want to give this work the gift of life? What is it about it that means so much to you? Putting that focus back on the work and it not being about you, not being about what other people might say about it. In the end, it's like, does this work deserve a chance to live and breathe? I think is a good one because that's what motivates us and that's the fun bit too. It's the actual bit that you can really get into and enjoy doing. You can celebrate some small achievements, and I think that this is better if you're focusing on the practice rather than the product as well. So showing up for yourself, celebrating the fact that you keep on going, that your skills are improving and so on, rather than just, is it done yet? And has it won an award? So yeah, I think the focus on the achievements that are about
not the metrics. And
yeah, I think so. Yeah. I was going to give a quote by Lady Gaga, which was quite relevant as well. She says, I still sometimes feel like a loser kid in high school, and I just have to pick myself up and tell myself that I'm a superstar every morning so I can get through this day and be for my fans what they need me to be.
Yes.
Isn't that just like those moments where we all just feel like that worst version of ourselves, like maybe, our unformed high school version where we've sort of got some ideas, but we've got nothing to show for it and no idea how to get where we're going.
I did learn a long time ago that to take a compliment, basically. The situation was that I found myself in was getting off stage, and there always would have been something that I didn't think I executed properly, or something wasn't quite right with the sound, or whatever it was. I would get off and that's what would be going through my head. And then if I had anyone come up to me afterwards and say that they really liked it, I would immediately be sort of saying stuff like, oh, thanks so much, but there was this and there was that. And I would sort of downplay certain things. And I discovered that was such a terrible thing to do, because it actually was telling a fan that they're wrong.
Yeah.
It's telling them that they didn't experience what they experienced, or that that's not valid what they're saying, or that they're silly for even coming up and talking to me. So that's something I've always remembered. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, but some people can just quickly see it for what it is. It comes up every now and then. Great. For the rest of us, say, where it just keeps reoccurring and can be an issue. It's like, this is something that I always remember, is those interactions that I had in the early days with people where my imposter syndrome would be making other people that actually were enjoying it would make their experience invalid.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're talking about creating art, you know, you can create it in a vacuum. You can lock yourself away and, in a sense, defeat a whole lot of challenges and artistic demons that might otherwise come up. But at some point, your art has to go out into the world, or your music has to go out into the world. And that's another area where you've got to deal with this stuff. People are going to find you and enjoy what you've created. And it's not your business to then let your imposter syndrome ruin that experience that you actually toiled over and created for them. So
they've actually had the experience you wanted them to have in the first place.
Yeah, it's weird. So it's like you're bringing something that is your own issue out, you know, you're speaking it out for no reason except your own either insecurities, or for me it was like I had to actively find a different way to engage with people that were enjoying what I was doing. And I was saying in a previous episode about before I get on stage, I have to tell myself that what I'm doing is like I belong up here, and, you know, just give myself a little pep talk to defeat those thoughts that may or may not pop into my head. So it's the same then when I hop off stage. I need to have that same mindset. You know, if someone comes and expresses their enjoyment of what I did, I can accept that and then ask them about themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it might just be that simple.
Yeah, that's true. And that's part of being a performer too is, you know, you put all this time and effort, like years of skill go into being able to do the actual performance on stage, but then being able to book gigs, market yourself, talk to fans, do all this stuff. It's like all these extra jobs that you don't think about initially when you're just focusing on trying to be really good at your craft and your artwork.
Yeah, so imposter syndrome can rear its head up when you're going to email someone about a gig. You can just kind of go, oh, well, you know.
Probably got other good people playing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it can
that's
pop
right.
up
Well,
everywhere.
it can pop up everywhere, not just in those moments of creating the work, but all over the place. Oh, it's fun, isn't it? Being a creator of any kind.
I mean, this is a journey of self-discovery. You never stop learning, you know, that you ever feel like, well, you've like reached the end.
Master craftsman.
That's the joy of it. Even someone that is a master craftsman is still discovering something new.
That's right.
And it's one of the secrets. So I wonder whether the nature of what we do breeds a little bit of this.
It is interesting. David Bowie said that every new project feels like it's the first one all over again, like you're starting again from scratch. So feeling like you're discovering something new, or you've got to figure out how to do it from the start. And like you're saying, that is the joy and excitement of it as well. I guess we get to feel off kilter and ill-equipped, like we're setting sail on this new discovery all the time. And that is part of what is exciting about being a creator as well. So maybe we flip it from feeling like an imposter to feeling like a discoverer. There we go. I'm going to end on those words of wisdom.
Well, it wasn't such a down vibe topic, really.
Good, I'm glad.
Well, I'm not sure why I thought it was a down vibe.
I don't know.
Topic.
We were talking about gardening and camping, and then I've looked at my notes and seen imposter syndrome and went, oh, man.
Yeah.
This old chestnut. Yeah.
And there is an element, too, of, you know, there's some things you just don't want to talk about on a particular day because, you just don't feel like distilling it and concentrating on the topic. But I have noticed that a lot of the things that we talk about, because I'm hearing it back. See, you don't need to hear yourself back. You can just get on with the rest of your day. But I hear this stuff back a couple of times over, but it does sink in. And I'm actually like, what's it called? Like taking a leaf out of our own books.
Wow, that's good. Well, thank goodness. At least if we can't influence anyone else, we can influence you.
I'm sure when I'm listening back, some of it will stick and it will be helpful. And
yeah, good.
I'll forget about the 9 huntsmen on our camper back in
Got to replace that.
2019 or whenever that was.
Yeah. What are your experiences of imposter syndrome or insecurities or some ways that you've overcome it? We'd love to hear about it. You can access us in the Patreon chat, join Patreon for free and access our community chat and get a little bit of an encouragement from others in the group. Yeah, we'd love to be the first people to cheer you on if you need it, if you're having one of those imposterish sort of days. Talk to you there.
You've been listening to Pain in the Arts, Triumph in the Face of Absurdity. Visit patreon.com and subscribe for bonus content. You can become a member for free. Follow the link in the show notes, www.patreon.com/Pain in the Arts Life. Follow our show on your favourite podcast player and remember to subscribe and visit our website, paininthearts.life. And there's some blogs up there. You can also join our mailing list and we will never spam you. Till next week, see you later.
See you then.